Hello everyone, welcome to Embedded Systems course with Arduino. In today's session, we are going to cover interfacing keypads with an LCD to Arduino. In last session, we saw how we can interface LCDs to Arduinos directly. Now we'll interface an input device, which is your keypads, right? Where you can press certain numbers or certain alphanumeric characters, and those will be displayed on LCD. So let's begin. So here if you see, right, this is the diagram, right, of how in general or how the physical keyboard, right, or the keypad looks like. So this is a 4 cross 4. This is a 4 cross 4 keypad, right? So why 4 cross 4, right? So if you see here, there are 4 rows, right, and there are 4 columns, and on each intersection, right, there is one switch, right? On each intersection there is one switch. So there are total 16 switches. So you will have what characters? So you will have 0 to 9, you can see here, right? 0 to 9 and A, B, C, D, star and hash. So these are the characters which we can input to the Arduino, and that will be displayed to the LCD, right? So now let's see how the basic functioning of this keypad works, right? So if you consider, these are the 16 switches, right? So these are the 16 switches which are arranged in a matrix, right? Right, so this is a very compact form. Now what happens, suppose if you press this switch, right, how will the Arduino know like which key was pressed, right? Whether A was pressed, B was pressed, 1 was pressed or 2 was pressed. So we need to understand which key was pressed and what intersection, completed to form the circuit. So if you press this, now if you will see here, right, that this current can flow like this, right? Current can flow in this direction, right, if we press this. So now R1 and C1 got completed, right? So now this will allow the current to flow, right? The current can flow here, and the Arduino will sense it that this intersection, right, this intersection was pressed, and it will recognize that particularly one was pressed, right, if one sits on this key, right? So what we generally do is, how do we scan this? So if you apply 0 volts, okay, to this column, now if you apply 0 volts and apply all the rows as one, as all the rows you apply as 5 volts, right? So you know that 0 volt was applied to C1, so you sense C1, column C1 was pressed, right? But now how will you know that which row was pressed? So what we do, now we start making one by one, we make it to 0. Okay, we make R1 to 0, R2 to 0, R3 to 0 and R4 to 0. As soon as we make it, we know that the circuit is complete, and therefore that particular row will be pressed. So R1 and C1 was pressed, so particularly key 1 was pressed. Okay, so this is how it is. Similarly, if you press, like let's suppose you press key 5 here, okay, you press this key 5. So how the current will flow? Current will come from here, it will go here, it will go here, and it will go like this, right? So this is the direction of the current flow, right? So you can just ignore that one, but yeah, the arrow key, you can see that the current R2 flowed from here, it went to there, and it reached here, right? So this was the flow of the current, right? So we know now that R2 was pressed and C2 was pressed, so the intersection sits here. So currently key 5 was pressed for us. Okay, so that is how it is. Now we saw this, right? Now similarly, that is how the Arduino senses that which particular intersection was pressed by the current flowing through it, and that is how the scanning, or we can say the keys are scanned, and we know that which input was provided. Okay, so either you can have keypads like this, where you can have these push button switches, right? So you can either have this push button, right, switches, or also you can have membrane keypads, right, which are which actually look like this. Okay, it actually looks like this, and you can press the keys, and but the functioning remains the same, right? The circuit should complete to allow the current to flow, and that sensing should happen by the Arduino, and we know that what input was pressed, right? So now how are the keypads, what are the pins to these keypads? There are actually 8 pins. Okay, so 4 are rows, right? 4 pins for rows and 4 pins for columns. Okay, so this is for your 4 cross 4. You also have a 4 cross 3 keypad also, right? So there will be like around 3 columns will be there and 4 rows will be there, right? So accordingly the pin number of pins will vary, but here you will need 4 pins to Arduino, and 4 pins for rows and 4 pins for columns to be connected to Arduino. So this is how we'll connect to the Arduino. We'll see that connection when we start designing the circuit, but this is the basic understanding of the keypads, right? So these are multiple, you can understand as multiple push buttons placed on a board, and those are interlinked in such a way that once you complete the connection, the current flows, and that particular switch which is pressed is recognized by the Arduino. And now in our problem statement, we need to take this 16 cross 2 LCD and display the characters, right? Whatever we press, so 0 to 9, right, and then A to D, right? And of course, what are the other things you can do is you can press star, and also uh, you can have hash character. Okay, so these things we can input or provide output to the LCD. So take the input from the keypad and provide to the LCD. So this is our problem statement for today. Okay, and also let's understand what are the general functions, or how do we configure the keyboard, right? So similarly to LCD, right, you have another library here, right? So you include this library in the C++ code, right, which we write. Include this, right? You include this here, and once you include this, you can use all the inbuilt commands and whatever inbuilt functions of the keypad module is there, that you can use. But there are basic only 2 to 3 important commands or functions which we should know, right? So first is the make key map, right? So keypad, so once you have declared the library, right, so now what we will do, we will make an object. So this command makes an object of type keypad. Okay, of type keypad. Now what are the parameters which are passed? Make key map, right? So we will declare an array, and this will give the key mapping of how the keys are placed, right? So I'll show that in the code. So this is basically an array. Then again row pins, this is also 1D array, right? This is your 2D array actually. Okay, of how the keys are placed. Now this is your 1D array, right? This is also your 1D array, right? And how many rows, right? 4. And how many columns are there? So this is what we enter and make an object of keypad type, as we had made an object of LCD type in the last session, right? So this is how it is. So now get key. Once you have an object declared, right, so you can get that object, right, in that any variable, right? You can declare any variable of the object, right? And then from that you can get the key, right? You get the key and display it, right, to LCD. So for LCD we know that we can use the print dot, like LCD dot print, we can use the data we can provide here. or the key whatever is pressed, we will recognize this, right? Recognize the key from this function and display it to the LCD using the LCD dot print data, right? So this is what is the use of these two functions, and which are used for interfacing keypad, right, to Arduino, and then ultimately displaying it to LCD. So in the next session we will design the circuit, right? We will take a 4x4 keypad, right? We will take an Arduino and LCD and a breadboard and try connecting these, right? In a similar way, we saw that we had 4 pins for rows and 4 pins for columns. So those are the only extra connections which we need to make to Arduino, and then we'll see writing the code how we declare the variable, right, or object of keypad type, and try to get the key and display it to the LCD. So that will be our task in the next session. Thank you for joining.